Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You are listening to Al Mubarak Radio with myself, Mr. Al Mubarak, with our official sponsors and partners, Interpal. We welcome you on a very special afternoon, the day of Jum'ah. May peace and blessings, everybody, be sending salutations to our beloved Prophet of Allah, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Mujtaba sallallahu alayhi wasallam. A 2 p.m. afternoon show means we have an interview, and today, alhamdulillah, our special guest here in the studio is Imtiyaz Ameen, who is a candidate, for the Conservative election, which will be happening, I would say, in less than 100 days now. So firstly, let's welcome, inshallah, onto the show our brother Imtiyaz Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam, and can I start by wishing all your listeners Jummah Mubarak, and thank you for inviting me here this afternoon.
Right, okay, Jazakumullah khair for coming actually, because it's only right, people of Batley and the Dewsbury areas, get to know, who they will be in under 100 days time going out, to vote for. So, this is something that everybody, should get to know. So we can also, get to know a little bit about your background. I'm sure you live in the West Yorkshire, Dewsbury area. Just tell us, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I mean, I was born in Saviltown, Dewsbury, and I've lived there throughout my life. Went to school there, went to mosque there, studied in London University, and came back. And then I worked in Bristol and London for a couple of years. And then since 2001, I've been living in Dewsbury again. So I'm a local person. I was elected as a councillor in 2003 for the Conservative Party in Dewsbury. I stood in Blackburn for the Conservative Party as the parliamentary candidate in 2005 against Jack Straw. That was straight after the Iraq War. And I've just been selected a couple of months ago for the Conservative Party as the parliamentary candidate in Batley and Spen. So I know the area, I know plenty of the people who live here, and I'm looking forward to the campaign. It started already. We're optimistic we've got a very good chance of winning. Obviously, you will have a new MP regardless because Mike Wood is standing down. So we look forward to the campaign. I think we have a very good chance of winning this time as well.
Right. Education-wise, you're studying, you did mention London area, etc., but, like you're from the roots, I'm sure you studied in the local area as well.
I started off in Saviltown Infant School. From there I went to Headfield Middle School, and high school I went to Birkdale High School, which is now closed, which I think you went to as well. So we have something in common there. From there I went to Dewsbury College, and then studied business law, and then ended up qualifying as a solicitor. Practice in Dewsbury with a few local firms, and that's my background in terms of education and work. In terms of politics, I've been actively involved in politics. So I got elected as a councillor in 2003, became a member of the Conservative Party. I think it was the late 90s, so it's been
a while.
It's been a while, and I've been involved in campaigns throughout that period locally, and obviously in the general election in 2005 and in 2010.
Right. Okay. So obviously you've got less than 100 days now.
Yes.
You must have been doing a lot of preparations, a lot of planning as well. Now, a question I would like to ask is, what's your vision for the Batley and Spen and your key priorities, for local people and economy, also job prospects as well?
Well, let's start in terms of where we are at the moment. From 2010 to now, in Batley and Spen, the number of people claiming job seekers allowance has dropped by 42%. There's been a significant increase in the number of people that are working now in Batley and Spen. That's directly as a result of the government policies that we have introduced. So that's a positive. There's still a lot of work that needs doing. One of the main priorities that we have is to regenerate our town centres. And even though if you look locally, if you take an area like Bristol, it's got 100% almost occupancy of the shops there, and it's a vibrant place. Now you compare that to Batley Town Centre, there's a lot of shops that are unoccupied, And we need to do something different, which leads us to regenerating that area. We have full occupancy, which obviously brings in more money for the council in terms of the business rates, and it gives the town a lift. And we have local jobs. We've got recently a growth fund, which it's referred to as for the Leeds City region, the Leeds Enterprise Partnership, but it covers all our area. There's £1 billion that's going to be invested in that. And if I am elected, one of the first things that we need to do is tap into that fund to try and draw that money here so that we can regenerate the area. I mean, the last major significant contribution that came from the government into this area was Batley Challenge in the late 80s.
Yeah, I remember that.
If you remember that. Yeah. And it was Mrs. Elizabeth Peacock, who was then the Member of Parliament under a Conservative government, managed to get around £37 million for this area. And that's the type of regeneration we need. We need a significant amount of money invested in this area. We've got some very good places. I mentioned Birstall, Cleckheaton's got good occupancy. We've got the Birstall Retail Park, but there is some serious work that needs to be done within the Batley area, in the Heckman-Wyke area, to regenerate that town.
Right. Okay. So also moving on as well, a question, view on Palestine. Okay. Yeah. Way forward to solve the issue. What's your personal thoughts on how ways and the communities, etc., can get together and help as well? I mean, what's your views on that?
Obviously, Palestine is a very emotive subject. I mean, it raises feelings amongst all Muslims, particularly, and especially after the 2004 Gaza war. The simple solution to resolve that dispute is a two-state solution, that Israel exists alongside Palestine. And that's a position that's been accepted by the Palestinians over 30 odd years ago, probably longer. It's accepted by the vast majority of the countries worldwide. But for some reason, and if you look at, since say 1991, you had the Madrid conference, you had the Oslo Accords, you've had the Taba summits, the Annapolis summits, you've had a number of summits, recently the Kerry peace process, but there seems to be no progress in terms of trying to recognize Palestine as a state living alongside Israel. Now, what Israel is doing at the moment is absolutely contrary to how a two-state solution should be the way ahead. That it's increased its settlement activity considerably. Article, I think it's 49 of the Fourth Geneva Conventions prohibits an occupying power from transporting its population into occupied territories. So what Israel is doing is directly contradicting what international law is saying. Yet, for some reason, you still have the United States that vetoes every UN resolution that goes before the UN Council and supports Israel. I mean, Israel needs to understand that for its own security, it needs to move forward and recognize Palestine as an independent, viable state, pre-1967 borders. But what Israel is doing, particularly in areas such as East Jerusalem, is increasing its settlement activity, which is making the two-state solution more and more difficult, particularly for Palestinians to accept.
Right. Okay. And also, to all the listeners, I am getting messages on our Al Mubarak radio phone, and people are asking, is the show started? Yes, it has started. And, many people who will be listening to this show right now, then please, do WhatsApp your message in on 07868 476 577. And you can also ask a direct question, if that's okay with yourself, yes, as well, to Mr. Imtiyaz, who's here and who will be a candidate. Okay, and maybe everybody who's in it has a chance to be elected according to the votes of our areas. So please do ask your questions, whatever they may be, and inshallah, if the answers we can provide here for you from the studio, will be of beneficial knowledge for yourself to when you go and vote as well. Also, counter-terrorism and security bill, being passed. Okay, what's your views on that? On how to exactly gain the confidence of the Muslim community and also example Charlie Hebdo events and the media aftermath?
Well, it's two separate issues. One is the Charlie Hebdo incident. Obviously, we unreservedly condemn what happened, but there's a wider issue in terms of the freedom of speech, the freedom of satire, whether it's right to mock a religion, whether it's right to mock a religious figure such as the Prophet, peace be upon him. Now, in a liberal democracy which we're living in, in that situation, there is that right to mock. However, as Muslims, we obviously hold the Prophet very dear, and any sort of depiction in terms of a cartoon or in terms of an image is we find, well, I'm not going to say we find offensive in the sense that everybody reacts in a separate way. When we saw the cartoons, we shrug our shoulders. What do? We feel bad about it. But with freedom of expression comes freedom of responsibility. And I'm not saying what happened is justified in any way, but if you offend, or if you do something which perhaps offends hundreds of thousands of people, probably a billion and a half Muslims worldwide, it affects a lot of people, you might get the odd nutter who does something like that. And I don't see what the purpose is in deliberately offending a whole community just because you can. I mean, we can here sit on radio and offend whoever we want, but what is the purpose? What's the rationale behind it? There's no logic in offending people. If you want to offend somebody, you have to give at least what is the reason in doing this. They know that if they depict a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Muslims will get offended. So why do it? Just because you can do it. I mean, it's such a weak argument. Oh, we have freedom of speech, so we'll do it. Of course, we accept that there's freedom of speech, but there's no particular reason why you need to offend Muslims. I think that's the first point. The second point, in terms of extremism, counter-extremism, there is an ideology that the extremists use. I think we need to be very clear about this. One is we say, oh, because of foreign policy, because of cartoons being depicted, people carry out these atrocities and acts of terror. But before we get to that stage, there's an ideology, and if, in short, I mean, I'll try and summarize it as best I can. That ideology says that Islam is incompatible with the Western liberal democracy. And for example, if you then vote in an election, or if you live in a Western society, you are adhering to man-made laws as opposed to God's law. And that is why, if you look at these people who practice terror, the largest number of victims are Muslims. So in Pakistan, in Yemen, in Africa, in the Middle East, the largest number of victims of terror activities are Muslims, because they simply do not accept that you should be living in a democratic society or in any other method, any other system, except the system they advocate according to their interpretation of Islam. That's the starting point. They then use that ideology to recruit people. And what's the best way of recruiting? Play on things like the cartoons, foreign policy, or they try and create this victim mentality amongst Muslims, saying, look, oh, this is what's happening in the West. Of course, there are issues for Muslims in the West, but we're not victims. We've succeeded. We've got, if you take Batley and Spen, Muslim businessmen, doctors, lawyers, accountants. We are a successful society. If you go, say, 40 years ago, when our parents came from India, from Pakistan, they settled here, to where we are now, that in one generation, we've moved forward considerably. Of course, there are issues within our community, but we're not victims. This country has been good to us. We've been good to this country. And we need to understand that. And fine, we have issues like the cartoons. We have issues like Iraq. We have all these issues. But that doesn't mean we have to go to Syria and start engaging in acts of terror.
Right. Okay. Moving on. Also, immigration. Okay. Yeah. Immigration is always on many topics when it comes to politics as well. Immigration, including EU, migrants, benefit cap, etc. Your views on immigration in general.
Well, let's divide immigration from non-EU immigration as a start, and then you've got EU immigration. Non-EU immigration has reduced under this government considerably. We want to encourage people to come to this country who can contribute to this country. So if you take, for example, the NHS, we have a very large number of doctors who are serving us through the NHS. So we're not going to say we don't need immigration. Any progressive society will always need immigration, and it will need people from abroad with the skills. I mean, if you look now in countries like India, South India, you have some fantastic software engineers, IT engineers. Now, if there's a job here which they can do, then absolutely there's no reason why they can't come over. So there's no sort of blanket ban on immigration. Immigration, if somebody can contribute to this society, is absolutely welcome. In terms of the EU immigration and immigration as a whole, you have to control the numbers coming in. That's not being racist or being xenophobic. It's just common sense. If for example, 2,000 people came to live in Mount Pleasant, for argument's sake, you then need to provide the appropriate services with the GP, with the hospitals, with the appropriate places in schools. If you don't provide them, then you will have issues in terms of providing a public service. So the way to do it is to manage that, saying, okay, we can handle, for argument's sake, 100 people based on our public services. We'll allow 100 people, they've got jobs here, we're happy to take that. But when you open up borders like we have at the moment in terms of the EU immigration, there's no cap. And the problem is that it puts pressure on your public services. And when public services are squeezed, it then leads to people blaming immigrants for that problem, which is the wrong way about it. So if you could, rather than have that problem later, if you control it at the outset, you don't create that community cohesion issue that people have come over and the things that we always hear, they've taken our jobs, etc. I mean, we're the children of immigrants. We're not going to turn around and say, oh, well, we're going to ban all immigrants, etc. That's just not going to happen. So our policy is this, that as far as the EU is concerned, if we get into power with a majority, we're going to hold a referendum, giving everybody a choice, do you want to stay in Europe, do you want to get out of Europe? David Cameron has said he's going to negotiate in terms of how people, in terms of the freedom of movement of persons and other policies. Then we go to a referendum. The decision is ours.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So that's Mr. Imtiyaz's view regarding immigration. Including also EU as well. Also NHS. Okay. Yes. This is a big one here now, especially what is happening in our own community here regarding our Dewsbury Hospital as well.
Yeah.
Really, realistically, what efforts would you really do to try to keep Dewsbury Hospital here? Because this is a very big question in our community. You are also living in Dewsbury areas. Yeah. I'm sure you have elderly, also young and our age people, and in cases of emergencies, etc., there is going to be facilities, but we need a hospital, don't we, in Dewsbury?
Yes, I mean, I don't think there's a proposal to close Dewsbury Hospital. There's a proposal to remove certain services from here to Pinderfields. I think that needs to stop. We need a full accident and emergency department that's consultant-led. The maternity services that are going to be midwife-led and moved to Pinderfields, again, that's something we need to try and save, because Dewsbury Hospital serves a very large area in North Kirklees, Dewsbury, Batley, right up to Berkenshaw. The problem we have with Dewsbury Hospital is, initially, if you go back to 2002, the merger that took place with Dewsbury Hospital, with Pontefract and with Pinderfields, that was a fairly crazy decision. What they should have done, if they were going to merge Dewsbury with anything, you should have gone with perhaps Huddersfield, because we have Kirklees that has policies that deals with Dewsbury, Batley, Huddersfield. Yet we have a health system with Wakefield. And it doesn't make sense to have the local authority working towards better healthcare, dealing with these areas, and then when we're being treated going to Pinderfields. I mean, ideally, if we could decouple Dewsbury Hospital from the Mid Yorkshire, that would be the best way forward. But we are where we are. The other thing is, a new hospital was built at Pinderfields. Again, it was a private finance initiative. I think it was around the 311 million mark that was spent building that hospital. the private finance initiative now means that approximately 10% of the annual budget of the Mid Yorkshire Trust goes to pay for that hospital. So it's a huge amount of money that's being drawn out to pay for that new hospital. And it's inevitable that when you have a new hospital being built, the services will be attracted to that new hospital, and the old hospital, i.e. Dewsbury, will be neglected to a certain point. I think the fight we have as a community is to try and retain all those services that should be retained in Dewsbury. Now, we have to be careful because some clinicians say we need, for argument's sake, if you've got a heart issue, you go to Leeds because they've got the expertise. Now, fine, for some services, if there's expertise somewhere else, we're happy to go there. But that doesn't mean every service needs to be transferred. So I think there needs to be an analysis of which services Dewsbury can retain and provide at the same quality as, say, for example, Leeds would provide or Inderfields would provide, and to retain those services. Because what we don't want to do is retain services and not have them to the standard which they should be. And it's a complex question, but I think if we have the right solutions put forward, it's something that's that can be done. Again, we have to travel half an hour to go to Pinderfields as a minimum. And a friend of mine last year, a year before, was in hospital, and just getting there sometimes 40 minutes, and then 40 minutes to come back. And you know, the car, you have to, if family members want to go, you've got to adjust all that. So it's difficult. So the decision was wrong to merge, especially when we've got Kirklees trying to put forward a policy to improve the healthcare of the residents of Kirklees. Whether we can decouple that, I'm not sure. If we can't, then we need to retain those services to the standard of comparable to other hospitals.
On that, okay, what I would like to say regarding the NHS about our Dewsbury Hospital is, you know, at the time, okay, there was a few marches, etc., demonstrations outside Dewsbury Town Hall. Now, I attended, okay, these, you know, the march, etc., the protests regarding Dewsbury. But, you know, one thing, okay, Imtiyaz, what I saw was the lack of people, okay, from our Muslim Asian community. Nobody was there. You know, everybody is in their house, you know, saying that, you know, we don't want Dewsbury Hospital to go, but nobody came out to support it. So, you know, when people are seeing this, do they even care? You know, this is something that, I mean, I'm saying on my own part, really, that when issues like this arise and when there is announcements made, and there are loads of announcements made regarding that there's going to be a demonstration regarding our Dewsbury Hospital, whenever it is outside Dewsbury Town Hall, etc., and then nobody turns up, then how can we, you know, fight, you know, this whole issue regarding Dewsbury Hospital?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, it's awareness as a starting point, and to get, I mean, you could perhaps ask a local imam saying, how does he get people into the mosque 5 times a day? I mean, he struggles. So, I mean, it's a difficult job getting us to move. It's emphasizing to people, look, the importance of retaining a local hospital, because if services go, they're not going to come back. So once these services are moved to Pinderfields, your only solution is going to be to go to Pinderfields, to go to Leeds. So it's raising awareness. I mean, obviously, you here on the radio, you have a wide audience. You need to get that message across. In the community, we need to get the message across that, look, this is very important, because there have been instances of fundraising where the Muslim community has contributed to Dewsbury Hospital. So they are interested. It's not as if we aren't interested, but it's just raising that awareness, emphasizing to people, look, this is a very, very important issue. And hopefully the next time that there is a march or there is a meeting, that we have a better attendance. Well, let's hope that once I win in May 2015, then we can do something about it.
It needs to be tackled. I mean, all of these issues, also policing, okay, you know, policing in our areas, crime rate, also drugs is a very, very big issue in our communities. And, you know, drugs, when we talk about it, it leads to a lot of other things. Crime, drugs, it relates to crime, and also it will relate to mugging elderly people. It will also robberies in the night, where we hear a lot of the time. I just heard, I think last week, there was a young single mother who was with her child, and at night somebody just broke in.
Right.
And I mean, this is like happening within our communities.
Yeah.
Regarding all of this, what actions or what plans have you drawn up for all of these?
Well, I think in terms of crime generally across West Yorkshire, it has dropped in the last 5 years. I think if I remember correctly, it's dropped around 15%. So the crime has dropped in West Yorkshire. But every crime is has a devastating impact on the victim. So we need to crack down on every single crime. The best way that you can deal with crime of that type is to have visible policing. I mean, I don't know if you know of a theory called broken windows theory,
Yes.
where if there's one window broken in a street and nothing is left, you have two windows broken in a street and the whole neighborhood goes downhill. But immediately, if you repair that window, you have visible policing, crime drops. So I think what we need to do is have visible policing, patrolling our streets. Having that, I mean, if you remember when you were younger, you knew the local officer. You had some, you see him walking around, you knew the local officer.
You knew him by name.
You knew him by name. And you could talk to him, you knew he'd be there 10 years. That's the type of policing that really helps. It's a joined up effort with the council, with the local authorities, the local police. And that's the type of policing we need to move towards. Also will help if we have a lot more of Asian police officers who are in the community, who you can relate to. You see them regularly, and all those things help. And again, it is a funding issue as well. The more funding you have, the more police you have on the streets. I mean, we have moved towards more active policing as opposed to policing sitting behind a desk. So our policy has been to try and get as many police officers on the streets, and I think that's the only way forward. And to treat every crime as an important crime. Only if you treat low-level crime as important will you start tackling every single, serious crime. Otherwise, if you start to ignore these crimes and say, "Oh, just report it to the police," I mean, so often, the car's broken into and you go to the police, it's just reported as a crime. It's not tackled. And we need to tackle every single incident, as it's very important.
Right. Also, what kind of support, do you have? Like, example, your family, your colleagues. I mean, does even Baroness Varsi, does she have...
You mean political support?
Yeah, and
for the campaign, you mean?
Yes, for the campaign.
Well, we have a campaign team
that
sets out a campaign plan, saying this is what we're going to do from now on until election day. That's all set out, and we basically follow that plan. Obviously, there's changes. You meet people. I mean, what I'm trying to do is go out and meet as many people as I can. Obviously, this is a Labour seat. It has been a Labour seat for around 18 years, so the task is challenging. But in 1983, I think it was when Mrs. Elizabeth Peacock first won here, and she stayed in post till 1997. So Batley and Spen has never been just a Labour area. It's been 14 years Tory, then 18 years Labour, and I think more than Labour, it's been a Mike Wood seat. If I can say that he's been a good constituency MP. I mean, you don't hear many complaints that he didn't help somebody when he called them. So I'd hope to continue in that vein. That you want to be a good constituency MP, you want to represent the constituents also in Westminster, and you want to bring some money into the area. Family-wise, I live locally, so I have the family support. I'm not moving into the area, so I live at home. My family life, while it is disturbed, I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to be disturbed. Obviously, with election time, I've got 2 young children. I live with my mum and my wife at home, so as normal as we can. Family life is affected during the election campaign, but haven't had to move away from home to fight a campaign in another area, which makes things a lot difficult. In Blackburn in 2005, I moved there, and it's not easy. When you move there, it's not easy.
I also asked Joe Cox this question as well.
Yeah.
That nearer the time to the election, would you be able to come on the same panel as, example, Joe Cox and yourself, and also, we can do a special show, inshallah, hopefully for the whole community, and that way, we could put the questions really direct. It would be like, like a question type, question time type of a show, where the panel can sit down, ask you the questions, and let the public, really decide? And because you see, like it's a, if you win the seat, how many years do you get?
Well, at the moment it's fixed term parliament, so it's 5 years. That may change depending on the outcome, because the outcome's not very clear at the moment. I mean, we've got a coalition now. We hope we get a majority, but if we don't, then we'll have to see where we are. But 5 years, 4 or 5 years, yeah.
So I mean, 4 or 5 years is not a short time period. No. It's a long, it's a long period, and that 4 or 5 years, you're really planning also for the ahead of that.
Absolutely,
5 years after that as well. And when you sat down, through all of this, you must have put some key points down on exactly, if I win this seat, what's the first thing I want to do, and what did you put down?
One of the first things that I've seen is a lack of sporting provision for the younger people. Particularly if you take this area where we are, there are a number of sports clubs, football. I think it must be several teams.
Yes,
they don't even have a clubhouse.
Yeah, they don't.
And if you look very nearby in Dewsbury, there is a clubhouse, and it's those things that initially when I looked at it, I thought, these things that need to be resolved. You need the town centre regenerating, particularly Mackley Town Centre. You need more play areas, because if you don't have activities for younger children to do, then you have the problems of drugs, of street crime, that sort of thing. Particularly for us, there's also a danger of extremist people with odd views influencing the younger generation. I mean, we've got a good setup here in terms of mosques. You've got some very good scholars. You've got Mona Abdul Rauf and senior scholars, Mufti Barat, Mufti Bodiyat. You've got decent scholars, but we need to have a link in terms of the scholars giving the right message in terms of what Islam is. It's not terrorism. You then got to find activities for these younger children to do, because they're not going to spend all the time in the mosque. We want to encourage them to do well at school. We want to encourage them to do well in business. So it's a joint plan, and in that plan you have to have some sort of play activity. And although there are well-run sports clubs here, I mean, you've got, I think tomorrow the Mount Cricket Club's got its annual dinner. They've been going for a good 25, 30 years. So there are well-run sports clubs, there are good activities, but I think we can do a lot more as a community, because we are a successful community. As I said earlier, we're not victims. We've not done, we've done fairly well. We just need to progress further. And there's a number of very active people who I've met already who are very keen to do things, but they feel frustrated that they haven't got somewhere where they can sort of channel that energy in terms of perhaps getting funding for a sports club, a clubhouse, that sort of activity.
Just talking, when you mentioned Mount Cricket Club, we are the official media partners of Mount Cricket Club, and tomorrow, like you said, is the annual dinner. And you're right, because Mount Cricket Club were here on our radio. They've been going for 30 odd years now. They're self-funded, and this is where they were saying as well that there's nothing out there where they can people can generate income towards a club. Now they've been going for so many years, 30 years, nobody's there out there. Now the chairman of Yorkshire Cricket Club, I'm told, and we're going to be interviewing, and this program is going to be live on our website as well from the Al Hikmah Center, hopefully tomorrow in the evening. So we're going to find out a lot more tomorrow regarding, like you say, sports as well. And I don't know if you're going to be there tomorrow.
Yes, I have an invite. Yes.
You have an invite. I would really advise you to be there, also tomorrow, because the chair and all the committee of Mount Cricket Club, they have very strong views regarding what you've just mentioned.
There's funding out there. Sports England, there is funding out there. It's a question of being able to access it. I mean, that's we are in a fairly unique position. The Muslim community, we face some various, we face challenges in terms of the extremism, that sort of thing. We can get these people away from any extreme ideology by getting them involved in these clubs. I mean, if a club's been there for 30 years, the people who are running are all sensible. Then it makes sense that the more they interact with these people, the less likely they're going to interact with somebody else. The more you have these activities, whether you have them in mosques, whether you have them in sports clubs, the less chances we have of our youth, A, in the worst cases, becoming an extremist or having radical views, B, having, staying off the streets, because that's the purpose behind it. I mean, I'm a chairman of a football club in Savilletown, and once a child comes and trains on a Saturday morning and plays football on a Sunday morning, has a game there, he's not going to go out on the streets. He's too tired. Then he goes home. I mean, that we need to sort of keep plugging away at that to ensure that we have a peaceful society and our community lives as it should be living.
That's very, very true. I agree with that as well. Anything else that you would like to add, before we do end this program? Alhamdulillah, you've set out the questions that have been put forward to you. I mean, this is again where we lack a lot. When we do ask our listeners, and this happens all the time when it comes to like the main points, ask the questions when you can.
Absolutely.
And at the moment there's no questions, but even if somebody would like to ask anything even now, please do send them in now. But in case, what would you like to add onto everything what you've said, and to all the people who are listening now, and also this will be available later to view on YouTube as well, to really let the people of our Batley Dewsbury areas know that you are the person, for them in under 100 days to put that mark on the paper for.
Well, we've covered quite a lot of the areas that, in terms of what I would do and what my priorities are. Just as a general point, that during the last 5 years, from where we were in 2010, from an economic viewpoint, where we had a huge deficit, unemployment was extremely high, inflation was up, mortgage rates were high, and where we are now, where there's been 1.75 million more jobs in the country, inflation is at an all-time record low, businesses, particularly ours, are very successful. Corporation tax has been cut to 20% this year. Income tax has been cut. The personal allowance, when you start getting tax, has been raised from £6,500 to £10,500. Pensions have gone up. So from a whole raft of economic indicators, we are doing extremely well. Now, we need that to continue. We don't want to go back to the situation in 2010. And the best way for that to continue is to vote for a Conservative government. And the Conservative government a majority Conservative government will continue with these reforms. And in Batley and Spen, by voting for Conservative, that's what you will get. I mean, I'm very pro sort of liberal markets, less intervention from the state. And we always have this question where the Muslims have always voted Labour, why haven't they voted Conservative? We've had these discussions, but for me as a Muslim, I feel that my views as a Muslim are more aligned with the Conservative Party. There's more emphasis on personal responsibility, on a stronger family unit, on a community-based mentality, pro-business, supporting the person who wants to do something. So if we can't have a situation where somebody who works for 35 hours, 40 hours a week is worse off than somebody who stays at home on benefits. I mean, that's just outrageous. So we support the individual as less involvement by the state as possible. We want the state to help us, not interfere in our lives. And that's the sort of philosophy that I believe in, that the Conservative Party believes in. And I think that's why we as Muslims should naturally be conservative rather than what's been happening. I mean, I think that's partly historical, that when our parents came over, went to work in the factories, joined the unions, ended up voting Labour. That's slightly historical. And some of the rhetoric that some of the Conservative politicians in years gone by have used, which hasn't helped. But that has changed. I think we are more pro, we do as a party now sort of give due consideration to the ethnic minority vote, which perhaps 20, 30 years ago we didn't. And, you have an ethnic minority candidate as well here in Batley and Spen. So I think on all those factors, if you, give it all, look at all the literature, give it some thought, listen to what's being said on television, and I think you'll only draw one conclusion, that in 2015 is time for a change in Batley and Spen. It's time for a Conservative MP here.
I'm going to ask you this one last question.
Yes.
This towards all the youth here.
Yeah.
You live in Dewsbury, Savilletown.
Yeah.
When it comes to a football team, what colour are you? Are you a red or a blue?
Red and blue, what do you mean?
What colour shirt would you go for?
Red is a
Man United? Or...
Oh my God, I'm a Man United fan, yes.
There you go. Right, okay. Jazakumullah khair, brothers and sisters listening to Al Mubarak Radio. Jazakumullah khair to everybody who has tuned in, mashallah, watching also the stream on the Al Mubarak Radio.com website as well, and also listening onto our apps and website as well. May Allah bless everybody. Remember, it's the day of Jum'ah as well. There's an hour appointed on the day of Jum'ah. Many people say it's the hour between Asr and Maghrib Salah. Duas are accepted as well. Remember us in your duas, and also everybody out there, the whole ummah in your duas. This was a special program with our future candidate, or the future winner, we should say, also, of the Conservative in our local areas of Batley, Dewsbury. This will be also available on YouTube on our channel Al Mubarak Studio on YouTube as well. So subscribe on that channel. Many more programs, interviews, and all of our shows are normally on there as well, straight after, once our programs will end. So a big jazakumullah khair for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon as well. And also tonight, Dr. Abdul Basit Sheikh will be doing the Real Talk show from 7 p.m. onwards till 8 p.m. And then Qari Yusuf Al-Badr will doing the Quran show with guest reciters from all over the world. Every week he gets through Skype many reciters from all parts of the globe. So tune in around that time as well. Keep listening, inshallah, and enjoy the beautiful day of Jum'ah. Until this evening, this is myself, Mr. Al Mubarak, with Imtiyaz Bhai, inshallah, signing out, inshallah, until the next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fi amanillah.